Out of the five position groups on this offense, three of them have been ranked in the top three nationally by On Three. That's a lot of threes. Does this offense have the potential to be the number one offense in the country? Spoiler alert. Yes, they do.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, I am reacting in the first segment to Jeff Simonton's list from On Three. He ranks each position group nationally, right, in terms of the top 10. As I mentioned before, three of the five offensive units for this Texas football team were ranked in the top three. Another was ranked in the top 10. Texas certainly has the potential to be the number one offense in the country. That's the first segment. In the second segment, we now have contract details for all 11 of our forever Longhorns that were selected on the weekend of April 20th into the NFL draft. So we discuss, right, how much money our forever Longhorns are projected to make over the next 4 to 5 years. A lot, right? And then in the last segment, the baseball team plays their last series of the season starting tonight at home against the Kansas Jayhawks. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So when you look at it, I think last year we were very explosive, offensively. At times, we were inconsistent, especially down in the red zone. But overall, the University of Texas had the type of offense last year that you envisioned every season when Steve Sarkisian came on. But I think this year in 2024 and then moving forward is when you start to see elite offenses like, without a shadow of a doubt, elite offenses moving forward every year under Steve Sarkisian. I think this year they have all the potential in the world to be a top five offense, even top, number one offense in the country, if you want to go there. And I think they should be able to maintain at least a top 10 offense every year moving forward, under the Steve Sarkisian regime, considering how we've recruited the quarterback position, how we've recruited every position on offense, right? And I know that we haven't just brought in, super blue chip players at the tight end position the way that we have, every other group. But we just had a tight end drafted in the fourth round, right? I would not be surprised if Amari Nyblack and Gunnar Helm end up, National Football League players. I have a ton of faith and a ton of excitement for Jordan Washington in the future. And the more success the University of Texas has, the better quality of players they're going to be able to bring in at that position. So you're talking about some of the best players in college football, future stars in the National Football League on this Texas offense right now. I think this year they have the potential to be the number one offense in the league. And hopefully that's something we can say about this team every year as long as Steve Sarkisian is the head coach. So every year in the offseason, Jeff Simonton from On Three ranks each position group, in football nationally amongst the college football teams. So from quarterback all the way to safety, right? Top 10 quarterbacks rooms in the country to the top 10 safety rooms in the country. And he is now done with the offensive side of the ball. And typically in the past, I've come on here and done like each one as its own episode: quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, offensive line. This year, I've been a little bit more out of the loop, so now I'm combining them, right? All five of the offensive ones have come out, and I'm discussing them all at the same time. So starting with the quarterback room, and, even though this is an opinionated column, right? Obviously he works for On Three. He's well-informed, knows a lot of football. But this is his opinion, right, on who the top 10 quarterback rooms are in the country. But sometimes when you're expressing your opinion or you're making an opinionated list, there is a right or wrong answer, right? Like, sometimes we say it's my opinion. It can't be wrong. This is how I feel. But sometimes things are so concrete that your opinion can be wrong, right? Like if I asked you who is the best shooter of all time, right? There is a right answer to that, and it's Steph Curry, right? Like you can come up with whatever answer you think is correct, but if it's not Steph Curry, it would be wrong. And I said all that to say that he has the quarterback room at Texas number one in the country. And I don't think anybody's opinion that is not having Texas number one in the country in terms of quarterback room is valid. There's a right or wrong answer to that one, regardless of what your opinion is. And it's the University of Texas. When you look at it, it may be unrealistic, right? Or I would say it may be unlikely, but it's certainly not unrealistic that Texas could have the number one pick in the NFL draft this year in Quinn Ewers, and then could backdoor and have the number one pick in the NFL draft next year in Arch Manning. Now, I think Arch Manning will spend at least 2 years in college, especially the way that college football is set up now, and the fact that he's waited, 2 years to get his opportunity. I'm not sure if Quinn Ewers will be the first overall pick this year, but obviously he has the potential to do so. But when you look at the rest of the quarterback rooms in the country, there is no other team that can say they potentially have the best quarterback in the country right now, who could also be the number one overall pick in the draft this year. And then they potentially have the best quarterback in football next year, who could potentially be the number one overall pick in the next draft, right? I think worst case scenario, you have 2 first-round picks in this quarterback room right now over a span of 3 years, right? I think Quinn goes in the first round this year, and I think Arch Manning goes in the first round 2 years later, right? So worst-case scenario, you have 2 first-round picks in your quarterback room now over a span of 3 years, right? Nobody else can compare to that. Nobody else can say they potentially have the best quarterback in the country right now in Quinn Ewers, and then could potentially hand the baton to the best quarterback in the country next year in Arch Manning. When you look at it, they're ahead of Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, and Alabama. I probably would put Oregon at number 2. I think Dylan Gabriel is a really good college quarterback, and I really like Dante Moore, who was ranked ahead of Arch Manning, coming out of high school behind him, as the successor at Oregon. Ohio State, they have Will Howard. He's done some nice things at Kansas State, but he was always good, not great to me. They do have 2 5-stars behind him, so that's probably carrying their ranking. But nonetheless, right, it's one, and then there's a big gap. Nobody is close to the University of Texas quarterback room. And like I said, right, this is an opinionated column, but you had to get this one right. He got it right. Quarterback room at Texas is number 1. Expect a big year from Quinn Ewers, and I expect just pure magic from Arch Manning the rest of the way. And, oh, yeah, Trey Owens looks like he's pretty good as well. Running back room, he had at number 9. And then, I'm definitely biased. I host Locked On Longhorns. Obviously, you see the Texas hat. I'm Texas all in me, right? And so initially I saw this running back room number 9, and I was a little, disturbed. Like, what? How is the running back room at Texas number 9, right? After reading his explanations, after looking into it a little bit more, I understand a little bit more. I still think number 9 is a little bit low, because he said he was ranking the entire room, right? Now, I can't expect on 3, national reporter to, weigh how much Kristen Clark and Jared Gibson might mean to this room, or, Trey Wisner. That's something that would be done more on the fan level or the local level, right? They're largely basing this room off of Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue, who are all-world players, or, all-world talents, in my opinion, as well. But like I said, I can understand more of maybe 9. Like, if I was nitpicking based on the way he wrote the list, I'd say maybe 7 or 8. But, like I said, at that point, I'm nitpicking. So when you look at it, he has a Texas running back room number 9. Like I said, that ranking is mostly based off of Jaden Blue and Cedric Baxter, who at this point have not amassed 1,000 yards. And I think that's the biggest reason why they're at number 9. If you look at who they're behind, you got Ohio State, who I think unquestionably is the number 1 running back room in the country right now, with Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson. I think you can make an argument that either one of them is the best running back in college football, and they both play for the same team. So Ohio State definitely number 1. Penn State, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, they have carried that team the last 2 years with very shaky, quarterback play. So, definitely, I understand them being the number 2 running back room in the country. Georgia, with Travis Etienne transferring over and then a bunch of 5-stars behind him, I can certainly see the argument for them being number 3. And then after that, this is kind of where they lost me, right? But like I said, I had to read the explanation, and, I can somewhat understand where he was coming from. So after that, he has UCF, Ole Miss, Alabama, Kansas, and Liberty ahead of the University of Texas. And I know every Texas fan that just heard that is like, what, right? But when you look at it, everybody on the list ahead of Texas is either returning a 1,000-yard rusher or transferring in an 1,000-yard rusher outside of Alabama, right? Alabama is just strictly projection. They have 2 5-star running backs that they expect to be really good. That's why they're 6th on the list. I don't think that's fair to the University of Texas, because we've seen more production out of Jaden Blue and Cedric Baxter than we've seen from the 2 running backs from Alabama. But like I said, at that point, I'm nitpicking, right? And I'm saying Texas should be 8 instead of 9, right? I would understand why everybody else is ahead of them, even though I think Texas has more talent in their room. Like I said, outside of Alabama, everybody else returns an 1,000-yard rusher or is transferring in an 1,000-yard rusher. As talented as we think this Texas running back room is, there is not an 1,000-yard rusher in this room, right? So I can understand why they would be 9 or 8, but I think at the end of the year, we'll be talking about this as a top 4 running back room, especially on a top 5 offense in the country. The wide receiver room ranked number 3 behind Ohio State and Oregon. I definitely understand Ohio State. I think Jeremiah Smith was the number 1 overall player in his class, not just wide receiver, and we know what they've done at the wide receiver position. Oregon, I'm a little ignorant on. I know Evan Stewart. I'm not sure who else they have in that room outside of that, but I trust Jeff Simonton. I've talked about his list on this podcast for about 2-3 years now. So, I trust Oregon. Then you have Texas ahead of Ole Miss and Missouri. But when you look at this wide receiver room and what you have, Isiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Jonte Cook, DeAndre Moore, Silas Bolden, Ryan Wingo. I think those are 6 players who are ready to have a huge impact this season for the Texas football team. And that's not to mention other very talented players in the room as well. Talent-wise, they can go 10 deep. Production-wise, I think they can go 6 deep right now, including a true freshman in Ryan Wingo. So, I know Ohio State has recruited really well at the position. Oregon made a big splash in the transfer portal with Evan Stewart, but so did we, with Isiah Bond and some other players. You can never complain about being number 3 in the country. Right, out of 131 teams, but I certainly think Texas has the potential to where we could be talking about them as the number 1 wide receiver room in the nation at the end of the year, regardless of how well Ohio State has recruited the position. Offensive line ranked number 2 in the country, only behind LSU. When you look at what you have an unquestionable first-round pick at left tackle, possibly even a top 10 pick. I think that's where he ends up. In the interior offensive line, right, guard, center guard, almost 100 games of experience between Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, and Devon Campbell, if not 100 games of experience, right? I didn't count, right? So it's either close to 100 or over 100. And then you have a physical beast at right tackle in Cam Williams. And then you add in the depth behind that, right? Trevor Gooseby, who seems like your next left tackle. Cole Hudson, who can, seemingly play all 3 of those interior guard positions and has played at a high level at times for the University of Texas, started, for the University of Texas. Brandon Baker, a blue chip prospect at the tackle position, and numerous other 4-star prospects. I think Texas having one of the best rooms, a top 3 room in the country, is a no-brainer, and really top 2 in terms of the offensive line at the University of Texas. And then tight end did not make the top 10, but were considered best of the rest. And I think that's fair, right? If there was one unit on this offense coming into the season that I think defensive coordinators wouldn't just totally lose sleep over, it's the tight end room, right? A quarterback, we got to worry about Quinn Ewers, right? His arm and his legs, right? Running back, Jaden Blue, Cedric Baxter, and whoever else can beat you. Wide receiver room, I just named 6 players that can beat you, right? Offensive line, you have to come in with a game plan against one of the best units in the country. I think tight end is where you can say, okay, we may have the advantage in that matchup depending on who we have on the defensive side of the ball. But I also think putting them in the best of the rest category acknowledges that there is talent in the room, right? And they could perform as a top 10 tight end room in the country this year. When you're looking at Gunnar Helm, Amari Niblack, I really like Jordan Washington in terms of the future at the position. I think there's a ton of talent in the room, right? But obviously, the lack of production, the lack of high-end talent or a high, end blue chip prospect in the wings is why the Texas tight end room is ranked outside of the top 10. But like I said, I love that Jeff Simonton acknowledged the potential, right? Being, under a quarterback like Quinn Ewers, being under a coach like Steve Sarkisian, with the talent in this room, they're not top 10 right now in the offseason. But once we get some actual data in the 2024 season, we could and hopefully should be looking at this tight end room as top 10, right? Quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into our 11 NFL players that got drafted from the University of Texas. And they're making some big money over the next 4 to 5 years. Just so happy for these players who have really changed the culture and the trajectory of this Texas football program. Remember how to be tech savvy real quick. I'm sorry. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Gametime. What is Gametime? Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. It's that time of the year. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Some of the best features of the Gametime app: priority last-minute deals. You save up to 60% off buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals. You save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. All in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime, will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, so there's normally a saying like you don't want to count somebody's pockets, you don't want to count, your partner's pockets, anybody's. You know what I mean? But for the sake of this segment, and when you got players going into the National Football League and their contracts are public record, then in this case we are going to count their pockets a little bit. But I just want to say, like I said, I'm so proud of these 11 NFL players, signing for millions of dollars. Really getting to see. The fruits of their labor pay off, right? You're talking about, this is not just what you accomplished at the University of Texas. This has been a lifelong journey for all of these players. You start from Pee Wee to, your first time playing tackle to, high school and then college, and to now be in the NFL on $1 million contract, whatever the amount, right? To be able to, be one of the top 256 players in college football getting drafted. Like, all of that means the world, regardless of how long it lasts. Like, we know the average career for an NFL player is 3 years, right? So even if some of these players last only 3 or 4 years, right, you have won at life, right? Like, you played football your entire life to get to the point to where you can make millions for doing it, right? And now we can say that 11 players from our 2023 roster are going to make millions of dollars over the next 4 to 5 years playing football because of what they've accomplished, right? Their work ethic and just everything else they've done to put themselves in that position. So really excited for them. Damn near get emotional when I think about it, but I'm not going to cry, at least on camera, because YouTube videos live forever. But, seriously, just to think about, the way that, these kids and these grown men now, these young men have changed their lives and changed their families' lives forever. It's special. It really is. So, I'm gonna get off my soapbox now and actually talk about the money they're making, but it's special. When you look at it, Byron Murphy was drafted 16th overall, the first Texas Longhorn to get drafted in this previous draft by the Seattle Seahawks. Love that fit, by the way. Love that city. I think they're going to embrace him at a high level. And we know, if it's one thing we know about Byron Murphy, he's going to give it all, his all on every snap, 110% effort on every snap. And, that's the type of, effort and that's the type of production that a fan base will love, right? A fan base will really wrap their arms around, right? Obviously, they want you to win games, but more than that, they want you to care, right? And Byron Murphy, on every single snap, he cares a lot, right? He signed a 4-year, $16 million fully guaranteed deal with a 5th-year option and an $8.5 million signing bonus. So when you look at it at the end of this, with the 5th-year option, $8.5 million signing bonus, he can make upwards of $30 million on this contract, right? Which is crazy. Just shout out to Byron Murphy. Did not start until this year, right? Obviously was a really good rotational piece for us this year, but he turned his 1 year into starting, into an All-American bid, a college football playoff bid, a conference championship bid, and a potentially $30 million contract, right? That's potentially what it could be worth. And if he doesn't get his 5th-year option picked up, more than likely that's because he's going to get extended, right? Or they pick up the 5th-year option, but then he gets extended. So you're talking about Byron Murphy, who, 5 years into the NFL could be signing a $100 million contract. I'm sorry, not 100-year, $100 million contract. All right. By the time he's in his 6th, 7th year, he could have made $100 million in the National Football League. We saw him when he got drafted, had the Gucci shirt on, big chain. I think the Gucci shoes to match. And there's a lot more where that's coming from. Because like I said, he could potentially make 30+ million over the next 5 years. Just a special football player, and so glad, that he's able to have that earning potential, because he definitely earned it at the University of Texas and everything he did prior. Xavier Worthy was drafted 28th overall by the Chiefs. I don't think he's signed yet, but he's also participated in rookie minicamp, so I'm not sure, right? But based on what I've read, he's projected to sign a 4-year, $13.8 million deal with $6.8 million signing bonus, including a 5th-year option. So if everything goes right for Xavier Worthy, he should make upwards of $20 million on that contract. Special football player, special money coming in. T'Vondre Sweat picked 38th overall by the Tennessee Titans. 4-year contract for $9.4 million with a $3.7 million signing bonus. So happy for T'Vondre Sweat. So happy that situation before the draft really didn't derail him, right? In terms of financially or, just team-wise, right? Going in the draft, still able to go in the 2nd round, 38th overall pick. That's a good amount of money, right, over the next 4 years for T'Vondre Sweat in one of my favorite cities in Nashville, right? Like I said, that's just a city where whatever you give to them, they're going to give it back tenfold. And I think T'Vondre Sweat and Keandre Coburn just have those larger-than-life personalities. They're larger-than-life, period, right? And I think in a city like Nashville, they're just going to love them, right? I think they're going to be superstars with the Tennessee Titans. And you're next to one of the best players in the league at that position, if not the best player at this point, in Jeffrey Simmons, right? So if iron sharpens iron, there's going to be a lot of iron getting sharpened in Tennessee. Jonathan Brooks, 4-year deal worth $8.4 million. with a 5.77 million guaranteed. So 8.4 million contract, 5.77 million is guaranteed. So we know Jonathan Brooks will make 5.77 million at least over the next 4 years. And then with a $2.94 million signing bonus, such a blessing for him. You tear your ACL, you don't know what's going to come after that, how that's going to affect you in terms of draft status, and you still walk away with almost $8 million that you should earn over the next 4 years of this contract, and upwards of 10 if everything goes right. And, I've obviously said that I think Jonathan Brooks will be an all-pro level running back in this league, so he should be signing a second contract, making up some of that money he missed on his next one. I think, Jonathan Brooks is a hell of a player, a hell of a person. I'm glad to see he's rewarded with it, rewarded for it with 7 figures. Adonai Mitchell slipped a little bit in the draft, still signed a 4-year deal for $7.2 million, probably lost out on $1 million just based on slipping down in the draft. But I think he's in a great opportunity in 3 to 4 years to re-up, right? If he goes in and he's the Adonai Mitchell that he was at the University of Texas or the University of Georgia, he'll be signing for about $20-25 million a year in 3 to 4 years, right? So he'll definitely make that money back on his next contract. I fully expect him to. Jatavian Sanders, this is where you see that he probably, missed out on some money. 4 years, $4.89 million contract with a $900,000 signing bonus. Of course, I'm not sitting up here acting like that's chump change, right? But when you look at it, who was drafted in the second round? Jonathan Brooks, $8.4 million. Adonai Mitchell, $7.2 million. Tavondre Sweat, $9.4 million. That's where Jatavian Sanders was projected to go. He ended up signing for $4.89. So you could realistically say that at least, right? At least the way he tested maybe cost Jatavian Sanders $2 million. Hopefully it's a wake-up call, and hopefully on his next contract, he can make up that $2 million tenfold. Kristen Jones, 4 years, $4.33 million contract with a $310,000 signing bonus, headed to the Arizona Cardinals. Like I said, 5 years ago, we didn't even, well, not 5 years ago, right? But, 2 years ago, we weren't even sure if Kristen Jones would get drafted. Now he's a millionaire in the National Football League. Obviously a huge fan. He's been on Locked On Longhorns. So, it's just really special to see, like I said, a player who 2 years ago himself probably didn't think he was getting drafted, and now he's a millionaire. Keelan Robinson, this is a really special one for me. This is somebody who I didn't think would get drafted. This is somebody who I thought would have to literally fight, like scratch and claw, tooth and nail to get on an NFL roster. And now he's a millionaire, right? With a 4-year, $4.3 million contract and a signing bonus of $281,956. Regardless of how long he lasts in the league, regardless of how long anybody lasts in the league, he's going to touch at least $1 million from this contract. And I think that's just special, right? Keelan Robinson was always a special player at Texas, never complained about touches, fit into his role perfectly, embraced his role perfectly as a special teams player and a running back that got some carries, right? And some touches, right? And now he's a millionaire because of it. And I just love it. 20 reps on the bench press. I think that perfectly encapsulates the type of person and player and just competitive fire that somebody like Keelan Robinson has. And he got rewarded for it with a $4.3 million contract. Jalen Ford, 4 years, $4.2 million to go back home, right? With a $254,000 signing bonus. Love the fact that he's going to New Orleans. Love the fact that he's going to a team with a defensive culture. I love the fact that he's going back to his city, and they certainly will embrace him. Whether or not he plays at a high level, but I do think he'll play at a high level. He's going to one of the best situations in the league for a young player on that side of the ball at linebacker. Ryan Watts, 4-year, $4.2 million contract with $182,000 signing bonus. Love this fit for Ryan Watts, especially a young DB, trying to figure out his place in this league. When you look at it, you're going to Mike Tomlin, who was, one of the best DB coaches in the league, was a DB coach under Tony Dungy on that championship team in Tampa Bay in the early 2000s. And then obviously, what Mike Tomlin has done as a head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the history, of safeties at that position or for that team, if that's what he's going to play with Troy Polamalu, Ryan Clark, they got Mika Fitzpatrick right now. And then if he gets on the field, you got TJ Watt, right? One of the greatest defensive players of all time, rushing the edge in front of you, right? So that's going to make your job a lot easier. So I think this is a perfect situation for Ryan Watts, in terms of a young DB trying to find his footing in the league. Pittsburgh is probably one of the best places you can go. And then Jordan Whittington, 4 years, $4.15 million. Just another success story from the University of Texas, where early on it looked like a bunch of injuries. He would never live up to his full potential. And now he's a millionaire in the National Football League. Now, $4.15 million is not going to stretch as far in LA as it would in some of these other places. But nonetheless, the fact that he's got drafted, the fact that he's on a 4-year contract, the fact that he should touch at least $1 million over the next 4 years based on this contract, and he's living out his lifelong dream of being a National Football League player based on everything that Jordan Whittington brought to the University of Texas. Could not be happier for him. Could not be happier for the 10 players before him that got drafted. All 11 players from this Texas football team that had such a huge role on this roster last year and over the last few years for our Longhorns are now millionaires and have fulfilled their lifelong dreams and are on their way to fulfilling their lifelong dreams, right? This is just one of them. But like I said, just so happy for those players and, happy that they get to change their lives and their families' lives based on the hard work they put in over the last 20 plus years. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get out of here with a quick synopsis of what we've seen from the baseball team and what to expect moving forward. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, getting out of here talking about the Texas baseball team. And I think overall it's been, a shaky season, right? I think with the expectations we have for this baseball program, most fans would think that we could have been better in the regular season, and we could have been better in the regular season, right? So I guess I'm a fan that, agrees with that. But I guess if you don't go undefeated, you can always be better in the regular season, depending on how cynical you get about it. But, nonetheless, this is a team that is going to be judged by what they do in the conference tournament, which is coming up, what they do in the regional, then hopefully super regional and College World Series, right? So even if they have an underwhelming regular season, right, we know that this is the type of program that is judged by what they do in the offseason, right? And thankfully, especially in a sport like baseball, you have the opportunity to get hot and go on a run and live up to the pedigree of this Texas program once the games really start to matter, right? Of course, they matter in the regular season, but like I said, when you have the success that the University of Texas has had in the baseball program, you worry a lot less about the, the regular season record, right? You're trying to win championships and hoist trophies. When you look at it, the final 3 games of the regular season start tonight, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday against the Kansas Jayhawks at home. Saturday will be senior night, so should be buzzing in the dish. When you look at the season as a whole, right, thus far, they've played 52 games, so you can perfectly split it down the middle in 26 games. I think this Texas baseball team has played better baseball in the second half of the season. Statistically, it confirms that, right? So if you look at it, they were 17-9 over their last 26 games, which is a 65% winning percentage, which is really good. I think we would all take that, especially in the regular season, a 65% winning percentage. Maybe some of the losses were bad, right, overall in the season, but any 26 game stretch, you should be happy with 17-9, I guess is what I'm saying. Over their first 26 games of the season, the University of Texas was 15-11 with a 58% winning percentage. So it's only 2 more wins in the second half of the season than the first half of the season. The eye test is just they've been playing better baseball, period. But you are first half of the season, 58% winning percentage. Second half of the season, 65% winning percentage. Even if it's just 2 games, to me, that's a big deal. They've been playing better baseball. And then 7-3 over their last 10, right? If we want to break it down, minimize it a little bit further or get even a smaller sample size or a more recent sample size, then the last 10, they're 7-3 with a 70% winning percentage, right? So even over their last 10, they've been better as a whole than they were over the last 26, right? So they're playing their best baseball at the right time, right? Or at least they're playing better baseball, right, at the right time. I'm not sure if they're playing their best baseball because when you look at it, even over that last 10 where you're 7-3, your pitching staff has allowed 6.4 runs per game over that last 10. That's a lot, right? And that's put a lot of pressure on your offense. Now, the reason you're 7-3 over your last 10 is because offensively you're scoring 7.5 runs. In those games. And so your offense has been dynamite, right, over the last 10 games. And, you don't want to put that much pressure on your offense. You don't want to expect them to score 7-8 runs every time just to win a baseball game. But 52 games into the season, you are who you are, right? And you're not who you're not, right? And so, obviously it's baseball. The pitching staff could get super hot and go crazy. I'm a Texas Rangers fan. I watched our bullpen be horrible all year last year and then turned into, one of the best bullpens in the playoffs once we got there. So, the pitching staff can certainly turn it around. But like I said, with 52 games of data, you probably are who you are at this point, and this is a team that's going to be carried by their offense. But nonetheless, like I said, 58% winning percentage over the first 26, 65% winning percentage over the last 26, and then 70% winning percentage over the last 10. This Texas baseball team is playing really good baseball heading into the postseason where this Texas baseball program is judged every year. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace.